You know, I always forget to clear my throat before we go on the air, and I apologize for that. I'm thinking about a number of other things. The last thing I'm kind of thinking about is my throat, and I realize I do kind of clear it. So anyway, I will hope to be. I promise, not hope. I promise to be more mindful of the throat clearing. And that's even with avoiding dairy. How was everyone? Thank you for your patience. I have had a hell of a time with time. Let's put it that way. A hell of a time with time. Today, I must have worked on the thumbnail for at least an hour and a half. And that's even with using an AI client. What are you going to do? I mean, sometimes it's just how this thing works. Some days are easier. It's not like you're moving through a pit of quicksand. I've never encountered quicksand. Then again, I've never run into the creature from the Black Lagoon either, which is usually where you would encounter quicksand. Something like that. But it felt like it. And time in general, time is doing this weird thing again where it just feels like I get up and then the day is over. And any meaningful assault on activity and productivity just feels like, just spinning my wheels. It's really, I don't know if anybody else is experiencing this, but that's been my experience. And I remember when I used to experience this more, I would have to get up super early to sort of make up at the beginning of the day for whatever feels like the grains of sand in the hourglass slipping through my fingers. So I'm going to have to revisit. I mean, look, it's no secret my health has not been great for the past month. And my sleep habits have changed as a result of that. So I'm doing everything in my power to, let me see if I keep my mic. Yeah, fucking Zoom, man. Sometimes, not Zoom, I'm sorry, StreamYard. Sometimes StreamYard pisses me off. Kind of through. I don't know. I'm getting to the point where I'm getting kind of through. Let me turn up my input volume so you guys can hear me better. You know, that's another thing. Is the inconsistency of technology in the model. Oh, it's your fault. You was in charge of it. Well, some days when people don't quite understand this, like when you go to one of these clients like StreamYard, you have a drop-down window, and the drop-down window will give you choices to make. Well, you can do this mic or that if you have options. And there are times when StreamYard does not recognize my microphone. And I can plug it in and out. And sometimes if I restart the computer, it works. But tonight, we're sort of back in that no man's land. Here we go. Now decided the ghost of the machine, the Deus Ex Machina, has decided to work with me. God bless. All right. We got that. Anyway, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but, I'm just, there's also something about when we go through a major event like this Charlie Kirk thing. And I never want to discourage anybody from reaching out to me and sharing information. Because a lot of times people send me some great stuff. Sometimes they'll send me stuff that I already know, but it doesn't really matter because they're eager to share and they want to contribute. So I never want to shut that down. And there are times when I feel like I answer a ton of texts. And that's one of the reasons why I sort of dropped email a long time ago, unfortunately. I couldn't get through my emails. And the reason why, and there are people that I'm sorry, I kind of left behind in the exodus of Zoho, but there are people that I was having these very long and involved email relationships with, and I liked them. And I was communicating with them on a very frequent basis, and I'm answering these emails, and next thing you know, I'm 3 hours into answering emails. And it's like, this is just, it was kind of getting to me every day. And at a certain point, I just couldn't do it anymore. So anyway, not that you need to hear my woes, but when we have an event, it does shift the balance of time because I am interacting with people and I'm sharing, things with them as well. It's not just a one-way street or share. I'm sharing with them as well. So when these things happen, right, and then the way that my brain works, for better or worse, is that I was texting with Vivi today, just briefly, and that I was one of these kids that had pre-diagnosed like ADD. I know that I did because I was always having my parents go to parent-teacher conferences. And I have theories as to why that is. Certainly there's an astrological theory. It's like living with Uranus on your ascendant when you relocate. Yeah, that'll do it. But the way that my brain works is that it's never, not that it's bad. I don't have a monkey mind. If I want to slow down, meditate, breathe, I can do that. But the way that it works now is that it's always in some form of engagement. So when people are sending me things, I'm digesting it, but I'm also kind of working whatever it is that I'm thinking about. There's like a process that goes on, and that is hard to turn off. But it's also something that I find to be very effective because it does help me out. And all of a sudden, I'll get the light bulb on top of the head or the neon sign in my third eye, and things will light up. I go, oh yeah, right. But that process is always happening, so it's hard for me to shut it off. So when I go to bed at night, many instances, I'm still whirring the gears in my brain. Anyway, long story short, it feels to me like there's something going on with time again. And we're dealing with all these events. And one of the things that, again, because of the process involved, one of the things that I thought about, if you go from July 4th here in Texas with Kerrville and the flood, and you zoom forward to the 10th of September and the shooting of Charlie Kirk. We're going to call that for now, okay? There are 69 days that fall between those two dates. The number 69 is interesting. If you turn it on its side, it's the symbol of Cancer. You might have done that, though. And you have the famous Jimi Hendrix song, If a 6 turned out to be a 9. That's just a little side note. But 69 days. And when you look at the number 69, or you turn, right, you turn 69 on its side and it becomes a symbol of Cancer. What Cancer is doing is it is connecting a circuit. That's what it does. When you see the two signs, you see the yin, you see the yang, it connects a circuit. And by the way, for the adult portion of our audience, there is another version and meaning of 69. And even when you look at that, right, that is connecting a circuit. That's when two people, it can be either same sex, either sex, or in some form of oral gratification with one another. But it does complete a circuit, right? There is this circuit when you get the energy moving between two people in that direction. It's very, very powerful. And, you know, you hear about these things when you're a kid growing up, and you can't wait to try it when you're a kid. When you actually try it, it's like, oh, wow, this is interesting, right? I kind of get this. Like we're involved in something here that is electromagnetic, and we're completing this loop, right? So if we look at the flood, which I think is very important here, like we have to go back to the flood in Kerrville. If we look at the flood and we look at the Charlie Kirk event, to me, they're sort of bookends in a lot of ways. Now, a lot happens between the flood and Charlie Kirk. In fact, there's the again, whatever you want to call it, the killing of Irene Zasutska in Charlotte, which I talked about earlier this week as a virgin death ritual, because everything you see about her, right? Everything you see, she looks very white, very virginal, and very sort of flustered in her pictures. Like there's a strange kind of delicate, fragile perfection about her. And then you see her, or this thing happen on this train, right? And it happens in the month of Virgo. Well, it actually happens right at the month of Virgo. I believe it's August 25th, if I'm not mistaken. So it's right at the beginning of Virgo. But we're really finding out about it about a week at most prior to the Charlie Kirk event. So it does happen under the sign of Virgo. And when you look at the two of them, Irene Zarutska, that's her name, Irene Zarutska, and the killer, we'll call him the killer, alleged killer. Oh, look at this. This is even a brand new part of the story. What do you want? What do you want from an immigrant, not just any immigrant, a Ukrainian immigrant who looks like the white goddess? Let me get rid of that. Again, another fun little fucking glitch from StreamYard. I need to change this program. Before fatal stabbing, Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska had fallen in love with the American dream. Not just an American dream, the American dream. The American dream. Even without yet mastering the English language, Irina Zarutska, a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee, built strong ties to those in her community, both young and old, in the 3 years she had spent in North Carolina. That much was evident in her viewing and funeral last month, after which were attended by the many people whose lives she touched since she and her mother and two younger siblings arrived in the USA from Kiev in August of 2022. Zarutska was the glue within the family. The uncle who requested anonymity says upward of 100 people came to pay their respects from the assisted living facility where she had worked in Huntersville, North Carolina. It's interesting that she's born in Huntersville or was living in Huntersville, right? Isn't that interesting? Because she was hunted down. I'm going to get back to that. It was one of her first jobs, her uncle says. The facility was a mile or two from the home, and his wife had opened to Zarutska and her family coordinated for buses to take residents to her services. So her mother probably got a sweet deal as a immigrant where they get low interest loans to open up businesses. And she probably had some kind of a nursing degree or something like that, or maybe did something similar in the Ukraine. Zarudska, her mom, her brother, and sister. No father. I guess the father's still over there, right? He's fighting in the war and can't go see his daughter. I think that's the story. From lived with her uncle and his wife from when they arrived in the U.S. up until May. What motivated us to get them out of Ukraine was seeing a picture of them huddled up in a bomb shelter near their apartment there in Kiev, her uncle says. They didn't want to come to this country and be a burden, he continued. They wanted to come to this country to build a new life. Now, this is where we begin to get cynical and suspicious. And again, we can have this debate until the sun comes up. I can get you 5 people who would give you 5 relatively solid reasons why this whole thing is an op, a fake, a false flag. There's that. You get 5 other people clearly would show you something very, very different. The same thing goes for the Charlie Kirk event. But for the sake of the brew, we'll call it the brew. For the sake of the brew, we're going to say, hope you're resting in heaven. Okay. But this is a very different looking picture of an immigrant, isn't it? It's a very different looking picture of an immigrant. She looks about as lily white and virginal as you can possibly get. This is not your garden variety Trenda Aragua, or however you say it, member. This is not your garden variety Haitian. This is not your garden variety Somali. Hell, it's not even your garden variety Mexican. And we're used to those. They pop up everywhere. It's true. No, this is a very delicate, exotic, yet familiar looking version of ourselves. You see, immigration isn't all that bad, is it? You begin to think about these things. Right now, the guy, what's his name? I think I always want to call him Deshaun Jackson, Carlos Brown. Now, in his mind, he's just a white bitch because she fits the profile, right? She fits the profile. So for him, he's not looking at the immigrant side of it. In fact, had she been perhaps Somali, Haitian, Syrian, but dark Syrian, not light Syrian, not Aryan Syrian, right? Dark. By the way, I've noticed this. This is not meant to be a trashing of a particular group of people, but the only time I watch commercials is when I watch NFL football or the NBA, and I only watch 2 teams. And I've been noticing there's this new trend in commercials where they have the generic ethnic woman. You can't figure out what she is. You're like, is she Indian? Is she Mexican? Is she Middle Eastern? Darker Middle Eastern, though. This is the new perfect woman. I saw a commercial, and it was the guy, the husband, and he looks like a nerdy, even though he already looks nerdy. He looks like a nerdy version of Gavin McInnes. I wonder if that's intentional. And Gavin McInnes is married to an ethnic woman too, isn't he? Isn't he married to an Asian woman? I think Gavin McInnes is married to an Asian woman, if I'm not mistaken. I think he might be married to like a Korean woman or something like that. Anyway, this is the new trend in commercials. So they're kind of moving away from, oh, we're just going to give you nothing but black women, right? Although you still see some of that. They're moving to the generic ethnic woman. I mean, but it works, right? I'm sure somebody in HR just checks that box, little DEI box. Yep, generic ethnic woman. We got that. Interracial marriage. We got that. Look, I don't care who marries who. If you're really, really in love with somebody, you're gonna look at that person. You're gonna go, man, like we're together. Like that's how I feel. If you really, really and then you make an adult choice based on that, right? Your kids are not going to look like you. Maybe that's all about vanity, but you make a choice based on that. It's been happening for a long time. But it seems like it has. The media has been promoting this hardcore, super hardcore for the last 10 years. And I had a show last week where I was talking about 70s TV programming and how it was all mixed. You had The White Shadow, where Ken Howard plays a coach. I think it was at Washington Carver High School. And he used to play for the Chicago Bulls, messes up his knee, and gets a job coaching this inner city kid. And mostly black, but then you had guys like Salami, played by, if I'm not mistaken, Vincent Van Patten. There was a Hispanic player. So you had this diversity. And he was the tough guy. The coach was the tough guy. Kevin Hooks was in it. Wolf Perry would later play basketball at Stanford University and then go on to become a TV director. And then they had the big star of the show was Coolidge, who was actually very funny. But this is how they were working with TV programming. It was all about integrating society. You don't have anything to be worried about. These people, they're fine. They're funny. You can plan their basketball. And these people, you people can go play for a white coach and it's okay. Right? So there was this media miscegenation that was going on in the 70s. It wasn't really like, hey, we're going to mix and have that scene. It was more like if there was a black couple, they were a black couple and they weren't mixed. White couple is mostly, that comes later. Right? We're still in that realm where, oh, that's a bit too far. But they're promoting a form of social unity. And I distinctly remember that being my experience growing up. And part of it was I'm just kind of wired that way. But I also have to think that television was tickling the ivories of my brain, the ebonies and the ivories of my brain. And as a result, I had a very eclectic friend group. It's the way it was. And I think that we've been indoctrinated again through the media via a different kind of representation, right? It's not like you're just all going to get along now because we want to have as many people purchasing our products as possible. Black households, white households, come together. You had even a sitcom like The Jeffersons. And Sherman Hemsley, I believe, is a crazy fucking Aquarian. He's an Aquarian. Mr. Jefferson, And he was really into the space rock group called Gong. And one time he flew David out to Los Angeles. And he had this big house and he had this party going on all the time, like 3 or 4 days straight. And the house was blacked out and the gong was being played all the time. And it was kind of a freak off, but it was like a 70s version of it. And everybody was adult and they all agreed to be there. And Sherman Hemsley was probably high on acid and smoking weed. He was an odd dude, right? He was clearly, but interesting. And David Allen was like, what the fuck am I doing here? How did I get here? How did I get to being in the home? And he barely even knew about the show. It's not like, he had a bunch of experience with the Jeffersons. But the Jeffersons are, an interesting example of this because they're moving on up, right? They're moving. Oh, the Jeffersons, you do show one of the first integrated relationships with Roz and her stiff sort of, I don't know, Boston blue blood husband, right? But they're showing the Black community, hey, you can move on up. When you move on up, when you're over here, you live the good life. And you get to go to where the white people go, and you get to shop at where the white people shop at. And guess what? We really want you to do that. Now, America was also so deep in a financial crisis during that time. Really deep. If you go into the Carter era, and that's not that far away, Jimmy Carter gets elected in 1976. And for 4 years, the country's economy is in a fucking toilet. It's really bad. Really, really, really bad. And that's another reason, perhaps, why they were promoting racial harmony. They don't want people to get pissed at them. They don't want people to wake up too fast because Paul Volcker had the interest rates at about 13%. Like shit you not. Really what they were doing was, there's a bunch of people out here who could really climb the economic ladder very quickly. The unions were almost at the peak of their powers in the early 70s. They start to crumble towards the end of the 70s. My father being an example of that. And they didn't want people to really have that piece of the pie. They gave them the TV version of it, but they didn't give them the quote unquote real version of it. So we had these fantasies, and even the Jeffersons, not the Jeffersons, whatchamacallit, Florida, what I'm talking about, J.J. Walker. Anyway, the Jeffersons are a spinoff of the. I think even Archie Bunker might be. I think Jefferson owned a dry cleaner, didn't he? He owned a dry cleaner. I just found this out. Do you know where the word money laundering comes from? It comes from a period of time where the Jewish mafia opened laundromats in the Midwest. It would literally move money through the laundromats. They had these laundromats. They were great for laundering money. That was Meyer Lansky's idea. Anyway, so the Jeffersons have a laundromat, dry cleaners, I think, if I'm not mistaken, both perhaps. But they're touting this racial harmony and this equality, and at the same time, they're also kind of keeping the masses in a state of somnambulance, the sleepwalking. So we weren't at each other's throats, or we weren't at the throats of the man, while the interest rates were 13%. And a lot of people could have done a quantum leap economically during that time. But anyway, I talked about that and how a lot of that was just pure programming. And we loved some of the shows. Sanford and Son. Who didn't love Sanford and Son? I mean, Fred Sanford, Grady, Lamont. Hilarious shit. Red Fox. Do you know Red Fox and Demond Wilson, the guy who played his son? I think Red Fox is only like 8 or 9 years older than him. It's the same thing with JJ and his father. He was only like 6 or 7 years older than JJ. It was weird. But that's television for you, right? So they're creating a program. And the program is one, racial harmony, go out and spend if you can spend. And when the spending gets tough, don't come after us. Right? We've done a really good job of creating racial and economic, even if you don't have a whole lot. Like the guys from What's Happening Now, it was still like your friends enriched your life, right? Anyway, well, we've been seeing it again. And we've been seeing a different kind of programming. And it's been all about women. And then it became not just about women, but ethnic women and quote unquote minority women, mostly Black. That's changing now. And they have been pumping the social steroidal solution for well over a decade. And the message is, hey, you can get all this stuff. You're at the top of the food chain. These guys, they're old news. And the only way they're relevant is if they marry into your world. And that will make them relevant. Anyway, it's a long way of me sort of going around the sort of the sun and giving you the 360. And we've arrived at the generic ethnic woman. Now, she's not generically ethnic. She would have passed for, kind of a somewhere between Marilyn Monroe and Tuesday Weld kind of character, with this kind of virginal innocence, right? So what happens to her? Well, tragically cut short. August 22nd. So that's right on the cusp of Virgo Libra. That's like the 29th degree of, Virgo Leo. That's the 29th degree of Leo. But we don't find out about it for a while. So this is on the anaretic degree. This is where Regulus was for centuries. Now, Regulus flipped in 2011, and it's at 0 Virgo, which is the sign of the Virgin. So normally we'd been seeing Regulus for centuries at 28, 29 Leo. That's changed now. So she's really in some ways the face of new Regulus and Virgo. And the whole idea with Regulus and Virgo is that there's a change in the celestial guard. That for centuries we were governed by divine right, divine rule, symbolized by the sign of Leo. And if you generally had very strong Leo in your bloodline, this is true. Astrologically, if you were part of the court, you were recognized because the court astrologers could read it. It's like, okay, well, they're good to go. They have the astrological royal bloodline. And I did a show. I've talked about this before. It's called the Leo Code. It's actually before I started doing shows with David, where I looked at all the different presidents, the last, 7 or 8 presidents, and their connection with the sign of Leo. And it's quite distinct. And we just start with our current El Presidente, Donald Trump. By the way, I have a little surprise for you tonight about Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk. That's called a cliffhanger. It's called a teaser. You may want to stick around for that. It's very interesting. Trump, 28 degrees, Leo rising, Mars in the ascendant. You know, oh, yeah, he was meant to rule. He was meant to be king. And somewhere Trump got the message. Somewhere he got the message. His niece Mary tells a funny story where he's at dinner. He's young. He's about 6 years old. It's a family get together. That's why she knows the story. And apparently he was a little tyrant. Can you believe that? He was a little tyrant. That's, for me, it's hard to believe. He's a little tyrant, and he is just raging on people at Thanksgiving. I think it's probably Thanksgiving. He's just raging on people. He's just going after him, and he won't shut up. And his father didn't take him into another room and whoop his ass, because that's what my father would have done. I'm telling you right now, after about a minute of mouthing off, I would have gotten a hard jerk by the wrist, and we would have taken a visit to another room. And I would have been shown distinctly that that is not how you act. Now, it may not have stopped me from a future event, but I guarantee that would happen. But nobody's doing that at his house. His grandmother, Trump's grandmother, gets so pissed off at him that she takes a pot of mashed potatoes. Remember, he's 6 years old, and turns it and just dumps it on his head. So he's got this pot, and he has mashed potatoes rolling down his face. It finally stopped the young potentate from shooting his mouth off. I guess that's what you have to do. If he's just going too far over the line, and hit him with the mashed potatoes. If I was a protester, that's what I would do. Remember how they threw shoes at George Bush? You never hit him. It's like, fuck, you get one shot. You better fucking hit him. In fact, you better get two shoes. So after he dodges the first one, you throw the second one, and then you hit him. Now, it worked for against Bill Gates. I think it was out of Paris, where he got hit with a pie. That was beautiful. I wonder if you could go to serious prison for shooting mashed potatoes at the president. I bet you could. I wouldn't recommend it. It's probably a bad idea. So don't say you heard it here. But this is a virgin. Again, if we're looking at Regulus, sitting at zero Virgo, and those days float a little bit, but they float. Usually, like on a leap year, you'll get August 23rd as a Leo day. And depending on what time of day, sometimes the sun will change later on August 22nd. Now, the interesting thing about Charlotte is there are two things. One, we're going to talk about Gemini. We're going to talk about twins. We're going to talk about the movie Prestige, doubles, doppelgangers. That's going to be a theme. And I'll show you some of this where it relates to Charlie Kirk and his killer. But Charlotte is like a bookend of Charlottesville. And Trump started his first term off with the Charlottesville, Virginia psyop. I'm going to call it a psyop because that's what I think it was. And it was to set up this whole idea that whites are racist, Trump is racist, whites are fascist, Trump is fascist, and you have this imprint that they can always go back to, right? It's like they're gonna carve out the basement. It's either that, or it's the Russia collusion thing, or the Russia. You know what I'm talking about. So Trump is hit with these giant logs in the road early on. But that's the gist of Charlottesville. You go to Charlotte, which we'll call a bookend, and everything is flipped. Right? Now, in this instance, it's somebody who is white and Aryan or not totally Aryan. There's a different version of Aryan. We're going to call her just white Caucasian. Okay. White Caucasian, ethnically Ukrainian, but boy, she wrapped her arms around the American dream. It's about as American as you can get without being American. And so she is killed at the hands of DeCarlos Brown. Again, we're going to use the word theoretically because for all intents and purposes, we're going to go down that part of we're going on that part of the trail in the rabbit hole. Okay. Now, when you look at DeCarlos Brown, it's like, oh, he wants Zarutska to be remembered for contribution to society. My God, she's 24 years old. Like, how many contributions? Not to be mean, 23. How many contributions to society did she have in the 3 years that she was here? Does anybody ever bring that up with your parents by any chance? You know, we got to remember their contributions to society. Well, were their lives tragically ended by a man in a red hood? No. Then why should we? They lived good lives. Her life was taken before her too early. Well, that's kind of the point. What were her contributions? Driving a van to and from her mother's senior care facility that her mother probably got a very low interest government loan in order to. I don't want to sound like a cold son of a bitch, but I'm just telling you that they don't give Americans the same treatment unless they're being martyred. So this is what's happening here. Zarutska was on her way home from the pizza parlor where she worked on the night she was killed. Her uncle says she had quickly risen the ranks from this entry-level position there to a line cook. The establishment, Zeppetti's Pizzeria in Charlotte, remember her as an incredible employee and a true friend. She's wearing a Zeppetti shirt. I don't know if you noticed that when she was on the train. So that's to designate that she's coming home from work. And who knows? Maybe that's just exactly what she was doing. Her ambition and charm are among the things, her uncle says, stood out about Zarutska and drew admiration from countless others. From the time she came to the U.S., she sought to work. She would babysit and walk dogs in the neighborhood and to learn English. Let me ask you a question, just out of curiosity. Would you leave your kids with a Ukrainian babysitter who didn't really understand English? I don't know. The Virgo in me says no. Because what would happen if something happened? And she had to quickly, who knows, maybe her English was good. I don't know. But if she was learning and to learn English, meaning she didn't know English, would you have somebody watch your children? If there was a 911 call, what would she do? I'm sorry, it's the Virgo in me. Walking dogs. I think dogs can understand basic Ukrainian or Russian. She aspired to be a veterinary assistant. In addition to working full-time at the pizzeria, was taking classes at community college to improve her English. She'd also been learning to drive. I tried to teach her how to drive, but I think the language barrier earlier on made it hard. He says, I guess that's the uncle, huh? But then her boyfriend really took it to the next level with her, and he was teaching her how to drive. Zarutska saved money to buy her first car and was expecting to get her driver's license next month. It's one of their last messages. One of the last. Her uncle asked how she was doing, and she expressed pride in having been able to buy a car and learn to drive. The very first trip she was going to make after getting her license was to drive. So she didn't know how to drive. She wasn't driving the van or the bus. So we're being corrected here. And come visit my wife and I, he tells people. He says he wants Zarutska to be remembered for her contributions to society. What contributions? She walked. I'm sorry, I'm being an asshole. Pardon me. But it's like there are people who really contribute to society. I'll give you an example. Joan's mother was a librarian for many years and helping kids all the time with learning and studying and books. You know, I mean, really going above and beyond the call of duty. She was a professional librarian, and she was there to help kids not just learn about the library system, help them at times with certain subject matter. A lifetime of it. Now that is an accomplishment. And I know a lot of you who have something similar, right? Either your own life or somebody in your family who's done remarkable fucking things. And is People Magazine going to have a story? I get it. She's young. She lost her life. I get it. But to say that she wants to be remembered, they want to remember for her contributions to society is a bit of a reach and an oversell. Okay, so let's take a kind of a look here. We're going to start here with this, and we'll stretch out a bit. Okay, so she is killed again by the Carlos Brown. So let's take a look at their Irene. It's Zaretska. Is it Zaretska or Zarutska? There's a Irina Zaretska who's a karate expert. Have you seen more karate in her life? And to Carlos Brown. Okay, let's take a look at them. So what do you, before the horrific moment, this is kind of the image that I'm looking for here. It's right here. Let's just do this. So they removed the GoFundMe for the accused Ukrainian killer. Now they even have Irina Zarutska. Look how beautiful she looks there. That's some Tuesday Well meets Marilyn Monroe stuff. On the train, she's clearly dressed down because she's flipping pies for Zapetis. Let me show you this. Right here. This is the image we want. I don't really want the. What do you see here? What is he doing? This is a man in a red hooded cowl. A red hooded cowl. And who do you think he's embodying? Or what story do you think he's embodying? This is Little Red Riding Hood. Right? I mean, he's got the red hood. And we know that the wolf is dressed up as Granny because he ate Granny. But this is a lone wolf wearing a red hood. There's also an interesting sort of deeper metaphor of Little Red Riding Hood about virginity, the penetration of the labia and blood, and menstruation. So there's another layer to Little Red Riding Hood. And the riding hood is the labia, and it's over, of course, the vaginal portion of the woman. Just giving you another interpretation of the Red Riding Hood. Anyway. And this is what we're in a little Red Riding Hood. This guy is a predator. He's a wolf. And he's gonna take her life. So we're in deep, deep, deep kind of archetypal territory. When we see this, we're seeing something that reaches into us on a mythopoetic level. And Little Red Riding Hood is a virgin. And I think that's one of the subtexts of the actual story itself. It's kind of weird, but it's also kind of true. So we have this mythopoesis that's going on here. So it hits us at a different level. And she's a virgin, like she's virginal. We don't know if her American boyfriend got past third base. But the way that she's portrayed, like she's not a brunette. Right? She's not generic ethnic woman that you see on TV. She's about as white and theoretically as virginal it gets. Happens right on the cusp of Leo, Virgo, Regulus. We don't really find out about it until the month of Virgo. Am I right? We're just finding out about this prior to Charlie Kirk. So the virgin part, it's almost like there's this precursor. It is literally just days before the death of Charlie Kirk. We're slogging through this. Where the hell did this come from? How long has this been in? Because it wasn't really covered. Am I right? I think I'm pretty right about this. So just put the virgin sort of placeholder on the side for a second. Okay. I'm going to show you something else here. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know that I've already talked about this. But I'm gonna show you guys what I stumbled across here. Okay. So one of the original martyrs, in fact, the first female martyr was Irene or Irene. There are several Christian martyrs, most notably Saint Irene of Thessalonica, also known as the Great Martyr. So this woman, Irene, we're talking about Irene, right? Irene, is considered to be the first female martyr. The first. A 4th century Persian princess who converted to Christianity and endured numerous tortures before her beheading, bringing many to faith. Other martyrs named Irene include Irene of Tomar in the 7th century Portugal and Irene of Constantinople, who suffered for icon veneration. She was known as Penelope at birth, but she chose the name Irene, meaning peace. She was the daughter of the pagan king Licinius. After converting to Christianity and leading many people to Christ, she faced torture by being thrown into burning metal oxen in other areas. So she had a tough life. Ultimately, she was beheaded. Although, what happens to our girl in Charlotte? She's not beheaded, but she does have a stab to the neck. Ironically, it is in the same area that Charlie Kirk will be theoretically shot. Left side of the neck. Remember, he comes down with the knife and gets her right in her artery here. Charlie Kirk shot in the same place. Ultimately, she was beheaded. With some accounts stating her body was later found to be gone as a sign of her glory and translation by God. Somebody moved her. So these are the other saints. I'm really interested in the great martyr Irene. You'll see her picture here. Very aquiline nose. Let's just read this a little bit more. The holy great martyr Irene was born in the city of Megadon. Sounds something like, I don't know, Donald Trump. Megadon. In Persia, during the 4th century, she was the daughter of Licinius, the pagan ruler of a certain small kingdom, and his wife Licinia. I guess they were licentious together. At birth, her parents named her Penelope. Penelope was very beautiful. Well, something she has in common with Irene. And her father kept her isolated in a high tower from the time she was 6, so she would not be exposed to Christianity. He also placed 13 young maidens in the tower with her. An old tutor by the name of Apellion was appointed to give her the best possible education. Apellion was a Christian, and during her lessons, he told the girl about Christ the Savior and taught her about the Christian faith and Christian virtues. When Penelope reached adolescence, so she's got a little bit of Rapunzel in her too, doesn't she? Her parents began to think about her marriage. One night, Penelope beheld the following vision. A dove entered the tower with an olive branch in its beak. Depositing it on the table, an eagle also flew in carrying a wreath of flowers and left it on the table. A raven flew in through another window and dropped a snake on the table. In the morning, Penelope woke up and wondered about the meaning of these things she had seen. She related them to her tutor, Apellion, and he explained that the dove symbolized her superior education, and the olive branch represented the grace of God, which is received in baptism. And the eagle and the olive branch indicated success in her future life. The snake signified that she would experience suffering and sorrow. Boy, those snakes, they get a bad rap, don't they? At the end of the conversation, Apellion said the Lord wished to betroth her to himself. Sounds a little creepy. And that Penelope would undergo much suffering for the heavenly bridegroom. Okay. And that Penelope would undergo, after this, Penelope refused marriage, was baptized by the priest Timothy, and he named her Irene, peace. She even urged her own parents to become Christians. Shortly after being baptized, she smashed all her father's idols to pieces. Since St. Irene had dedicated herself to Christ, she refused to marry any of the suitors her father had chosen for her. When Licinius learned that his daughter refused to worship the pagan gods, he was furious. He attempted to turn her from Christ by having her tortured. She was tied up and thrown down beneath the hooves of wild horses, so they might trample her to death, but the horses remained motionless. Instead of harming the saint, one of the horses charged Licinius, seized his right hand, and tore it from his arm. Wow, that's a savage horse. Then it knocked Licinius down and began to trample him to death. This caused a great deal of confusion among the people there, but Irene consoled them with the words of Christ. All things are possible to one who believes. And indeed, with wondrous faith, she prayed, and through her prayers, Licinius rose unharmed in the presence of many eyewitnesses, with his hand intact. Nonetheless, that's clearly a miracle. She's qualified. It's the canon. Licinius abandoned his domain and lived in the tower he had built for his daughter. He spent the rest of his life in repentance. They were baptized as Christians, too. Look at that. Very powerful demonstration. Power of faith. St. Irene lived in the house of her teacher, Apellion. Her and Apellion were, they were kind of tight. And she began to preach Christ among the pagans, leading them to the path of salvation. When Sedicius Yezdegerd, the new prefect of the city, heard of the miracles performed by the saint, he summoned Apellion and questioned him about Irene's manner of life. Apellion replied that Irene, like other Christians, lived in strict temperance, devoted herself to constant prayer and reading holy books. Sedicius summoned the saint to him and urged her to stop preaching about Christ. He also attempted to force her to sacrifice the idols. St. Irene staunchly confessed her faith before the prefect, not fearing his wrath and prepared to undergo suffering for Christ. By order of Sidecius, she was thrown into a pit filled with vipers and serpents. Oh boy, there's the snake. The saint spent 10 days in the pit and remained unharmed. For an angel of the Lord protected her and brought her food. Sidecius described this miracle to sorcery. And he subjected St. Irene to many other tortures. She remained unharmed. Under the influence of her preaching and miracles, even more people were converted to Christ and turned away from the worship of inanimate idols. Sidecius was deposed by his son Sapor, who persecuted Christians with even greater zeal than his father had done. St. Irene went to her hometown of Magadan in Persia to meet Sapor with his army and ask him to end the persecution. When he refused, St. Irene prayed, and his entire army was blinded. Don't mess with Irene. She prayed again, and they received their sight once more. In spite of this, Sapor refused to recognize the power of God. Because of his insolence, he was struck and killed by a bolt of lightning. Don't mess with Irene. After this, Saint Irene walked into the city, performed many miracles. She returned to the tower built by her father, accompanied by priest Timothy. Through her teaching, she converted 5,000 people to Christ. It's a lot of people. Next, the saint went to the city of Callinicus, or Callinicum, possibly on the Euphrates River in Syria. The ruler of that place was King Numerian, the son of Sebastian. When she began to teach about Christ, she was arrested, tortured again by pagan authorities. They enclosed her inside of bronze oxen, one after another, which were heated until they were red hot. When the great martyr was placed within the third ox and began to walk about and split asunder, Irene emerged from it as from the fires of hell. This resulted in thousands of souls converting to the faith of Christ. Sensing the approach of death, Numerian instructed his eparch, Babdonus, to continue torturing the saint in order to force her to sacrifice to idols. Once again, the tortures were ineffective, and many people turned to Christ. This is how it works, by the way. You don't strike back. It's through divine intervention where either you're able to defeat your assailants through the miraculous intervention of the divine, or you're calm, you're poised, your grace under intense pressure wins over people who are urging on like a blood sport, right? So that's how it works. This is the Christian magic. You take on the torture, you take on the physical pain, you take on the suffering, you never waver in faith. At times, there is a supernatural intervention. Now, I'm not making fun of this. I'm just telling you. At times, there's a supernatural intervention, or it's through the display of character, courage, and devotion to Christ by not doing the things that your pagan captors or torturers would have you do that wins people over. This is how it works. It is not heads on a pike. That's a different model. Christ's holy martyr then traveled to the city of Constantine, 40 miles northeast of Edessa. By 330, there's an interesting number, the Persian king Sapor II had heard of St. Irene's great miracles. To prevent her from winning more people to Christ, she was arrested, beheaded, and buried. However, God sent an angel to raise her up again, and she went into the city of Mesembria. After seeing her alive and hearing her preach, the local king was baptized with many of his subjects, wishing to convert even more pagans to Christianity. St. Irene she's not even dead, right? She's not even dead. She was resurrected. You can't get rid of Irene. Where she taught the people and performed many miracles, the Lord revealed her, the end of her life was approaching. If being cooked in a bronze oxen, being thrown into a pit of vipers, being beheaded is not going to end your life. What do they have in store for her? Then St. Irene left the city accompanied by 6 people, including her former teacher, Apellion. On the outskirts of town, she found a new tomb in which no one had ever been buried. After making the sign of the cross, she went inside, directing her companions to seal the entrance to the cave with a large stone, which they did. She also told them that no one should move the stone until 4 days had passed. Napoleon returned after only 2 days and found the stone had been rolled away. The tomb was empty. There are conflicting accounts about her holy relics being taken to Constantinople and other places, including Patras, Samos, and Patmos. Patmos, of course, being the place of John of Patmos, who is the author of Revelation. According to the Western martyrologies, St. Irene was martyred in Thessalonica after being thrown into the fire. Well, according to the Menologian of Emperor Basil II, St. Irene completed her martyric contest by being beheaded. I'd say that's really the big test. You're beheaded, you come back. St. Irene led thousands of people to Christ through her preaching, and by her example, the church continues to honor her memory and to seek her heavenly intercession. All right, so all of this basically, so let's see. In Greece, she's also the patron saint of policemen. Isn't that interesting? She's the patron saint of policemen. Saint Irene is also one of the 12 virgin martyrs who appeared to Saint Seraphim of Sarov on January 2nd in the Diviveo Nun Eupraxia on the Feast of the Annunciation in 1831. Surprised not 1833. By her holy prayers, may the Lord have mercy upon us and save us. Amen. So she is considered to be the first great martyr, the first female martyr. It's Irene, or Irina, which means peace. Okay. Now, if you look at the day that Charlie Kirk is, we'll use the word unalived. They like to use that word on YouTube now, unalived. The day that that happens is the 10th of September. What's the next day? It is 9/11, September 11th. And, you know, I have done numerous shows on that is the actual birth date of Sananda Yeshua, Emmanuel, Jesus Christos. That is the day, 9/11, right? What month? Virgo, born of a virgin. But that is, and there are Christian pastors who share the same belief that I do. Now, do they believe that Mary was a virgin, or that he was born under the sign of the Virgin? That's an interesting theological question that you'd have to ask them. For me, I think it's probably more of the latter. That I'm going to go on record. Now, I've heard other things. I've heard that Mary's Jesus' father. There's this whole thing with Joseph, and he had his testicles crushed or something like that, right? So there's no way that he could actually be the father, and that's why this whole thing is completely miraculous. The way Edgar Casey tells the story is that Mary was an Essene, that Jesus wasn't. These were Essenes, and we get the word essence from Essene. They were there for the essence. They were the old desert. These were the real salt, literally salt of the earth, right? The old desert, salt of the earth Christians. This is post Old Testament, right? But a very different kind of Christianity is being practiced here. They're waiting for they're waiting the life of their Savior. And so, according to Casey, there's a group of women. They're all virgins, by the way. And Mary is one of them. And they're set aside. And it's through things like fasting and prayer and spiritual tests that the mother of Jesus would be touched by the hand of God. And then you would have the virgin birth. But again, the virgin birth does take place in the month of Virgo, 9/11. Now, there's a theory that, and this is a way out theory, that guy, what was his name? I think his name was Randall Williams. I think it was Randall Williams. Randall Williams or Randall Winters, one of the two. Anyway, he was a kind of a long time connection with Edouard Billy Meyer, the guy who had this weird book, coffee table book about, I believe, the mystery of the Pleiades or contact with the Pleiades. And he had this connection with this Pleiadian commander named Semyase. I think that's the name. And there are all these crazy pictures in the book. And I remember seeing it for the first time. Wow, man, this is far out. I kind of dig this story. And some people have, debunked Billy Meyer. Some people say, let's get this Randall, I think it's Randall Winters or Williams. He says it's all legit. So we'll go with the legit version. So Billy would tell him stories. And he said that the Pleiadians had told him that Jesus was impregnated by somebody who was either full Pleiadian or part Pleiadian. So Jesus had cosmic DNA. He had astral DNA. So his father was quite possibly not Joseph, but it takes the conception into a completely different realm. You can look it up. There are people that will debunk it, but it's an interesting theory, and it's a theory that was picked up by Larry Cohen, who did the movie Demon, and later renamed God Told Me To, about a woman who gets picked up by an alien, an abduction, and is impregnated. And she has two sons. And one of them is kind of a Christ-like demonic character. It's actually one of my favorite kind of grindhouse movies. I like it. It's all about guerrilla filmmaking. Tony LoBianco is very believable as the lead character. And what Cohen is doing is he's kind of morphing sort of these mythos, right? Anyway, there's another alternative, right, for how does he become who he becomes. And perhaps the way that this either Pleiadian or hybrid Pleiadian connected with Mary was not really biological, not in the way that we understand it. So, but I do believe, and again, there are many church pastors who are studying astro-theology, and they'll tell you exactly what I'm telling you. 9/11 is the day. They play with some other days. I think 9/16 has come up. I've heard 9/9, right? But we'll take 9/10, 9/11, just for the sake of argument. And they can't nail the landing on Charlie Kirk on 9/11. They can't. He cannot be in Orem, Utah for that day because for a number of reasons. Number one, I believe on 9/11, correct me if I'm wrong, and you guys do, and I thank you for that. Tucker Carlson had either released or was about to release a documentary on 9/11. Like, you don't really do things on 9/11. You don't go to colleges generally unless you're going to talk about 9/11. And I don't think Charlie Kirk wanted to open that can of snakes. So you get to 9/10, which is about as close to 9/11 as you can get. Right? Now, again, what happens in our conscious awareness? It already happened on October 22nd. In our conscious awareness, what happens between October 22nd and September 10th? Irene Zarutska, right? She gets killed. She's a virgin. Of course, the great martyr Irene, we know she was a virgin. Well, we hope. We hope there wasn't any hanky-panky going on there with Mr. Don't Stand So Close to Me. So we have the sacrifice of the virgin. Like, this is all very ritualistic. We have the sacrifice of the virgin. We have the inversion of Charlottesville, Charlotte. Am I right? We go from the white on black crime to the black on white crime. That's dark alchemical magic. We're in the black and white checkerboard of the Freemasonic game board floor. That is an alchemy. It's a very, very, very dark alchemy. And you also have like Charlottesville, which is the diminutive of Charlotte. Right? It in some ways is the lesser Charlotte. So it's like the child of Charlotte, the daughter of Charlotte. It's interesting. That happens, and we're processing that. And then Charlie Kirk happens. Happens on 9/10, which is the lead up of the day when the King of Kings is born. Why that day? I've gone through this numerous times. It's when Mars and Regulus are conjunct. And they're only conjunct for this one day. Was it the 3 BC? And that's what the three magi see. Oh, yeah, they see the Mars Regulus conjunction. That's what they're following. So I've gone over that chart. I've gone through that chart many times. It's a fascinating chart. It is a Virgo chart. And we have the drudging. So it's wild that this event happened on August 22nd, the Irene Zarutska event, August 22nd. And it takes us that long, really, like almost 3 weeks, because it wasn't being passed around by the media. They had it locally, but it wasn't being picked up on the net. Now, all of a sudden, as we head into Ritual Week, now we have to deal with it. And people are distraught. And they couldn't even catch their breath long enough. Now, all of a sudden, we've got Charlie Kirk. By the way, Charlie Kirk's wife she doesn't look exactly like Irene Zarutska, but she's blonde and she's white and she looks virginal. Can you feel me on that? Let's take a look at her. Now, she's a little more American. Let me give you a few pictures over here. Just so you can, again, she probably dyes her hair. You can see her roots and everything. But she's blonde. Right there she is giving her press conference. Erica. There they are. Out in the desert. Kind of reminds you a little bit of Holy Essene territory. So you can sort of see this. She does, she looks way more American. She's blonde. She's wearing a white bridal gown, which again symbolizes the Virgin. By the way, Charlie Sheen, we're going to get to Charlie Sheen, who's also a Virgo, by the way. We have the two Charlies, which I'm going to talk about. Oh, yeah. So Charlie Kirk is from the same neighborhood. He grew up in the same place as Ted Nugent. I almost thought that was Ted Nugent there for a second. So the Nuge was born in the same Illinois town as Charlie Kirk. Now look at that. There he is with Candace Owens. Now, Candace is also an interesting biblical character. Candace is a Taurus. And Queen Candace is the first ruler of Ethiopia to convert to Christianity. So you got Irene, Irina, Candace, right? And then here we have sort of, again, the virgin territory. This looks like they're in Israel. Or maybe not. Maybe that's Lake Michigan. But then Charlie did go to Israel. Husband at open casket. Oh. Okay. Here we go. I always thought, and again, I'm not here to be disrespectful of the departed. I always thought Charlie Kirk had a weird face. You know who he looks like? He looks like, what was that? There was a hamburger place in L.A. What's the name? It'll come to me. I saw this photo of Charlie Kirk about 3 weeks ago. It was an odd looking photo. I'm just going to be honest. Now I'm going to stoke the conspiracy fires a little bit. He had strange teeth. Like, what's going on? It was like a weird thing with his smile. You know, it was one of those smiles that you see where, like, reptilian shapeshifters will show their mouths and they'll have two sets of teeth. Have you ever seen that before? Anyway, he had strange teeth, and it also kind of looked, and again, I don't mean to be disrespectful, like he was wearing a mask, and his head was huge, totally huge. Let me see, famous LA hamburger. Bob's Big Boy. I think it's Bob's. Bob's Big Boys. Yeah. Yeah. The Bob's Big Boy logo kind of remind me of Charlie Kirk. I'll show you. See? The great Bob's Big Boy. Great burgers. Epic. Here he is. Do you know who's from the same town as Charlie Kirk as well? Ray Kroc of McDonald's. It's true. Ray Kroc would later move to another town where he'd grow up in the same town as Walt Disney. All right. So why don't we get into some Charlie Kirk astrology here? I'm trying to establish that there's a chain of events. If you go back even further, and I need to bring this up without going too far afield. On July 4th of this year, we had a massive flood in Kerrville. Massive. And again, it is 69 days, which I talked about, between that flood and the Charlie Kirk event. And it's like when these things happen, especially when you live here, you're ground zero, you're just thinking about other things. And we did a bit of a tour of some of the memorials. I'll get some video tomorrow of the memorials in town here, and I'll share them with you guys. But when you're around something like that, you're looking at, okay, well, what's the astrology around the event, which we went into in depth. We really took a deep dive into the astrology of the flood, the eclipses, right? There was just so much there and taking it all in. And it's not long after the flood where I start to kind of go downhill, right, in terms of my health. But one of the things that I didn't really wrap my head around, I mean, I did in a way in which I would reference like the days of Noah. And of course, we have Noah, which tracks all the flood stuff. But the one place my brain didn't go was like, well, this is the beginning, right? And in a lot of ways, we think of Genesis as the beginning of the Bible. When in actuality, one could make a case that it's about Noah and the ark, I guess, going up from Florida to Mount Ararat. And that's when the story begins, right? And then you have the sons of Noah. And all those sons represent ultimately these different tribes of Israel. That's really the root story and the Genesis story of that part of the Bible. It starts with Noah. So it's really not in the beginning, but it is the beginning. You guys get what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So if we look at it from that perspective, so we have this flood, very Noah-like. And then 69 days later, we have, for all intents and purposes, a crucifixion, not literally, figuratively, of Charlie Kirk, as close to the day that you can get on 9/11 without actually it being 9/11. And having this virginal sacrifice that happens in between the two. So you go July 4th, August 22nd, September 9th, 10th. So August 22nd is kind of the midpoint between the two events. And that is how you do a ritual. That is how, and so now Charlie Kirk has been equally vilified and martyred in some ways. So let's do this. Let's take a look at the here. Let me give you what I think Charlie Kirk's chart is. Now, there are some people who believe. I looked, and I couldn't find a birth time. So maybe there are some folks here that have stumbled across this. I have Sag rising because he interacted with college kids. Like, that's what he did, right? It was all about debate. He was going on college campuses. We throw Chiron up there. Guess where it is? It's in the 9th house. And it's in the sign of what? Virgo. And it gives him a pretty big 10th house, right? And I would say he's kind of a 10th housey person. But I feel like this is, Charlie Kirk was 6'5". And I thought, what would be an appropriate ascendant for him? Aries, he's got the Aries hair, I got to tell you. He's got and he had a big noggin. But Sagittarians tend to be tall. And if he's living his chart, right, he's going to be jamming with that true note on his ascendant, and he's going to be debating. Now, I also thought of the possibility of an Aries rising, which would put that true node in the 9th house and him being on college campuses. But if you go down to the 3rd house, which is really where debate happens, like it's very Gemini, you argue position. He has Saturn and Pallas invested in the 3rd house. Now, what was going on at that time is that Mars was right here. And people have noted that. Like Mars was on Charlie Kirk's sun. There's a bunch of people born that day who had Mars on their ascendant. I can show. We're going to go through a list of people born on that day. By the way, do you know who else was born on October 14th? Different year, George Floyd. Isn't that interesting? So we have Charlie Kirk born October 14th, George Floyd born October 14th. And what are we talking about here? Again, it's a slight inversion of what happened in 2020. Instead of a black martyr, which is what George Floyd became, unfortunately, we, in some circles, have a white martyr. We're not quite there yet. But the shape that this is taking, and we'll tune into some of the events that have rapidly happened on the back end of it. You can make a case that Charlie Kirk is a martyr, although usually, like if you're on the left, you want martyrs. The left loves martyrs. It gives them the superior spiritual position because somebody died. They become sacrosanct. You can't speak ill of them. Well, what about George Floyd's daughter? What about George Floyd's mom? And what about Stephen Jackson? People still love martyrs. They're big on the left. But the right doesn't look for excuses. They're really not into it. But if they could politicize Charlie Kirk and whatever happened here, they'd use him as a martyr for sure. Right? So what would the martyr effect be? The martyr effect would be that free speech would be guaranteed no matter what, that the trans community and people in the trans community would be hunted down like rabid dogs, because that's what happens, at least on the left side. On the right, they don't do it because they're Christians. They're not going to go do that. But generally speaking, the moral position of transgenderism would be in some way. Well, that's another strange part to this because there's a weird there's a weird sort of corollary with Tyler Robinson, who sounds nothing like a serial like a crazed killer. That there are people on the left who are kind of martyring him, which is strange. It's a strange dynamic. People are just trying to find energy to promote their demoralization. Yeah, so Mars was on his sun that day. And yes, duly noted. Duly noted. In fact, why don't we do this? Why don't we bring in the astrology of the chart of that day? And the beautiful thing about this is that we know when Charlie Kirk was unfortunately unalived. Right here. All right, so let's do this. So I'll give you a visual. There's the sun right there. That's Charlie Kirk. So the event is on the inside. Took place at 12:23 p.m. September 25th in Orem, Utah. So we have a Sun-Mars conjunction. That's Mars. Tyler Robinson is in Aries, by the way. So he's over here, right? He's down here. So if you want some kind of activation, like we could get into the Sun-Mars opposition. So transiting Mars was opposing Tyler Robinson's sun. What's interesting about Tyler Robinson is he doesn't have a middle name. Most killers have middle names. But I guess the trans killers don't. Anyway. Now, at that time, remember, he's speaking. Now, this is kind of interesting, this part. He's speaking, and this is the ascendant. So we have Scorpio on the ascendant. He's speaking. We have Mars, right? This is his Mars. His Mars. His Mercury is in the sign of Scorpio. So he has a Mars-Mercury conjunction, which is pretty powerful, actually. I can see why Charlie Kirk was good at what he did. I never really paid attention that much to Charlie Kirk. Wasn't that interested in TPUSA. But according to, wow, I got another shocker here to share with you guys. But according to many videos, which many of you have seen, his position on Israel seemed to be changing pretty rapidly. And he was on the Pat Bet David show. Now, you got to keep in mind, Pat Bet David, Libra, I'm just rolling my eyes because he does a Libra move. Pat Bet David is probably one of, he's so successful and has so many subscribers and views on YouTube that Pat Bet David has his own team at YouTube. And it's not Pat Bet David or Valuetainment Inc. It's YouTube. They have a small group of people that are dedicated to working with Patrick Bet David because he is such a prolific content creator. So he's when you have that at YouTube, you have clout. Tim Pool has that. Tim Pool's had that for. I think Tim Pool went into it with that team intact. So Pat Bet David pulls down the show where Charlie Kirk starts to question Israel. He was recently on a show with Ben Shapiro where he was talking about, hey, what are we doing here? And he and Trump kind of got into it about October 7th, the money, the free speech stuff, which, by the way, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's, whatever you want to call it, passing, transference, unaliving. And again, I am not ruling out that a lot of this is super fishy. But we're gonna go with the prima facie that there's no more Charlie Kirk. Okay, unless we can have undeniable evidence where there's no plausible doubt that it was completely and utterly staged, and that you can take that evidence to a court of law and have everything opened up and re-examined, and then have it reclassified not as a murder, but still under investigation, then we probably need to agree that we're not going to see this guy again. And that moving forward, this is how things are going to unfold, and they have. So I'm just trying to set the rules for our conversation. But what about this? I'm not denying that. There's a lot of really, really high strange. And the way that the world has amplified so quickly is that you probably would have had at least 2 or 3 people send you, hey, did you see he got shot on a menorah, which he did, by the way. When you look at the arena, amphitheater. What the fuck was that? Right? It's a menorah. I'll show you if you haven't seen it. You know, it's one of those things that'll definitely open your eyes. What's going on? Yeah, my computer is kind of fucked up. Hold on. Okay, my bad. I apologize. Let me see if I can get this. This is just weird. I take the image off of my messages. Okay. Hold on here. I'll get it for you guys. Okay. Screenshot. Good to go. That's how we do it. All right, let me put it up here. Can you see it? Can you see the menorah here? So Charlie Kirk was here. Right there. Now, the shooter theoretically was back here, but there are some people say there's a lot of hanky-panky going on here. A lot of hand signaling. Maybe some crossover with Butler, Pennsylvania. One of the people supposedly was at 9/11. Have you heard that? A witness of 9/11. Now witness at Charlie unaliving. But this is a ritual structure. Was it set up this way for the event? I don't know. I don't live there. I don't go to the University of Southern Utah or wherever this is. I can't tell you that this is how the structure, but on that day, this is what it looked like. And that's pretty menorah-like, if you ask me. So that's a weird symbol, isn't it? But when you bring it into the context of a ritual, well, you have to have candles at a ritual. Usually at a ritual, you have candles, a bell or small symbols, and you have water. Those are the three things that they're sacred. You can bring in an instrument. A drum is sacred. A trumpet is sacred. A flute is sacred. But that's about it. Candles are important. Now, when you see this, what the hell is going on here? Is somebody leaving their calling card here? You know, the thing about Utah and the Mormons that are interesting is that there's this weird connection with, how do I say this? Clearly, there's a connection with Zionism. Like, this was the new Zion. This was the new Zion. Utah was the new Zion. When Brigham Young finally got to Utah, it was the new Zion. And they have Zion National Park, Zion Canyon, Zion. They got Zion Williamson. No, he's in New Orleans. So there's this. The Mormons saw themselves as basically the new Jews, and that in many regards, this was the new Jerusalem, and where they were was the new Zion, the new Holy Land. So there's an interesting connection between Mormonism, Judaism, and Freemasonry, and some Native American Indian belief. And this is what, what's his name? John Smith. This is what he puts together. No, it's not John Smith. That's the English guy. Hold on. I always get this guy mixed up with John Smith. It's what, it's, sometimes when these names go into your brain, and I usually have a really, really good memory, but there's just some names. Joseph Smith, I get him confused with John Smith sometimes, the guy who was with the Pilgrims. Anyway, another interesting group, Pilgrims. So these guys were wild, right? They were totally wild. And Joseph Smith was cut in half from the navel down, I believe in Nauvoo, Illinois, because they had these weird border wars. Like they didn't stop. Well, they tried to settle, they being the Mormons. They leave New York. They're going across country. They try to settle in Illinois. They try to settle in Kansas. They try to settle in Missouri. And wherever they go, there's trouble. Big trouble. There's fights. There's shootings. They're trying to get kicked out of town. Trouble follows the Mormons where they go. So Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, that area. They're trying to settle there. And eventually, Joseph Smith has to get called back. And he gets cut right in two. It's a ritual sacrifice because that's how you spill your guts. This is what happens when you talk too much. You talk too much, you get cut in half, and guess what? You spill your guts. Let me spill my guts. That's what it means. So if you say too much, you'll get the Black Dahlia treatment. That's what happens to Joseph Smith. Anyway, but they're this weird hybrid of some part Christianity, part idea of chosen people, which is what Zion is about, and then the German, Polish Jews have another version of it. They're going from west to east, and these people are going from east to west. And the Mormons are an odd bunch. And you can believe whatever you want, but they're an odd bunch. And I've had many clients who are former Mormons, and mostly women, and it's nightmarish. Their stories are nightmarish. I guess if you're a dude back in the old days, it might have been a pretty good ride, but not so much for women, right? So Smith was killed by a mob, igniting the Illinois Mormon War. That's what was going on in Illinois. Missouri, Illinois, Kansas is heavy. And they eventually arrive in Utah. And according to look who's here. Who's here? Yeah. According to our guy John in Utah, all that stuff was already there. Like a lot of the temples, they just rolled in and go, "Hey, look at this. We just found our new tabernacle." So there's a weird intersection between Mormonism, Zionism, Judaism, right? And they even share like sort of an intersection of Freemasonry. In Judaism, you have B'nai B'rith, which is a Jewish Freemasonic order that helps get Harry Truman elected. And then Mormonism actually comes out of parts of Freemasonry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So there's a weird kind of intersection there, but the Mormons have their own special sauce, right? They have their own special sauce, and they play by their own rules. And they're very different. And a very insular community. If you want to keep a secret, and there are Mormon secrets, you may want to have an event in an area where the people are known for keeping secrets. Makes sense to me. And is Mormonism a form of Christianity? Not really. It has some of it built into it, but it's also got like a lot of heavy duty cosmic astral mythos that's part, like in Mormonism, and I'm taking a lot of shortcuts here. You eventually redeem your family line. You do all these things in this lifetime. You go out, you propagate, you have a great business, you make a shit ton of money, you have a ton of kids. You literally become a god on earth. That is the goal, to be as prosperous and fruitful as possible. And if you have achieved these things, and you have done them, and your Mormon pledges and all the things that go along with your belief system in the afterlife, you get your own planet. And you get to become a god of your own planet. They don't really teach that in Christianity. So it's a very unusual belief system. Very, very unusual. And a lot of their temples look like they were excavated right from Tartaria. So does the place itself mean something? I would say yes. Definitely. Because in a lot of ways, Mormonism is also the first New Age religion in America. Because it's bringing in these, like they have an angel, Moroni, who has this, he gives Joseph Smith this magic black mirror, which nobody ever sees, by the way. And then the tablets, of course. He's given the tablets. And the tablets are the Book of Mormon. So to me, it's the first kind of New Age religion. Because he's getting channeled information by this angel, which is not recognized by the Catholics. The Catholics will recognize a lot of angels. Moroni is not in their Book of Angels. I could be completely wrong, but when you look at the angels, Azazel and Michael and Raphael, it's all the L's, the ELs. Moroni does not have the EL. He's not an Elohim. Anyway, it's an interesting place for it to happen. That's my take. So you can see it, right? This is a complete ritual setup. Then we'll just go through the high strange. There was a book about his death that was published a day before. They always do stuff like this. They always leave these. It's like they're rubbing it in our face. Oh, yeah, we're going to publish this little book on Amazon. Oh, yeah, it's a day before. Then we'll take it down. Well, first we'll change the date afterwards. Oh, I saw it. Did you see it? Yeah, I saw it. And then you scramble to go back. Yeah, I got the screenshot. And it feels like we're in an episode of Survivor or Lost. Oh, Survivor as well. Interesting. There's just all this weird high strange. And it's like, oh, can't you see it? Israel killed Charlie Kirk. Everything is pointing to Israel, right? Charlie's turn. Apparently, he got into it with Netanyahu. Apparently, got into it with Trump. These are all stories we're hearing. We have video recordings of him and Pat Bet-David on the record. I'm questioning the events of October 7th. Ben Shapiro, why do we send them so much money? Trump, what's going on with the free speech thing? So you look in that direction and go, that's easy. Well, we just found out the smoking gun. And then on the heels of it all, they had 3 laws that went into law. And basically, if you can get your passport taken away now. Like, how far are they going to go with this? You know, how far are they going to go? Are they just going to go, hey, yeah, if you speak out against Israel, you'll get debanked? Are they just going to Nick Fuentes everybody now? When did this become something that superseded our Second Amendment? And they're not done with this Charlie Kirk thing yet at all. Not at all. They're gonna continue to grind on this. And getting back to the image of the flood and the unaliving of Irene Zarutska, Little Red Riding Hood, the virginal sacrifice, the sacrifice of Charlie Kirk on the day before of the birth of Yeshua Sananda Emmanuel Jesus, right? Like all that stuff is happening. And it's all very what? Biblical. It's biblical. But it's a dark version of the Bible. It's just like no biblical version that we've ever run across, really. So it's inverted. There's an inverted version of this, of the biblical side. But what the flood signals to us is that it is on. It is basically saying that we are going to be flooded with these events. That's what the flood is saying. That from this point forward, it's not like we're Noah on the, hey, we're on Mount Ararat. And we saw a dove. There's a dove. Land ho. No, we're not even there yet. We're still, tossing and turning and, bouncing and roiling on the sea. And people are getting kind of seasick of the whole damn thing. If you want to be 100 on it, most people can't handle this. I played The Second Coming last week by Yeats. And this is, to me, this is what this is about. The Second Coming. And when you read the lyrics of The Second Coming, read the words of the poem, they're profound. They're really, really profound. Because it talks about anarchy being unloosed and the tide of innocence being lost, right? It's like, oh, you thought the second coming was going to be beautiful, didn't you? You thought the second coming was going to be a beautiful thing. That Jesus would come back and he would bring flowers and just put them everywhere, right? And he would be seen in multiple places, multiple times, all around the globe. And people would say, finally, at last, he's back. Oh, our suffering is over. We are delivered. But what Yeats is proposing in The Second Coming is something far different. This is not the turn the other cheek, redemptive Jesus of the Bible. This is like, it is time for your comeuppance. You are going to be shown how far you have strayed from the truth, from the flame of God and the Prince of Peace. You are going to be shown. And the second coming is anything but peaceful and redemptive. In Yeats's world, the second coming is a horror. It's a horror that lands on mankind, sets down on humanity, and it shows us just how we've been. That's the second coming. It is much more Old Testament-y in some ways than, hey, we're ascending, we're going to the fourth and fifth dimension now. And by the way, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. But that's not how the poem is set up. The poem is saying, hey, you thought this was going to be dandelion wine and roses, right? No, this is not that. So if that's true, and what we've seen over the past few days, well, we're in for a hell of a ride. I can tell you that. Because at a certain point, what do they say? There's no atheists in foxholes. I mean, this is kind of where we're headed. We're headed into that drift because more events are coming. More events. We are under attack now. We're under spiritual attack. We're under a what's the word I'm looking for? I'm sorry, I'm still kind of wiped out a little bit. But we're under like 5th generation warfare, 6th generation warfare attack. Like this is not World War I or World War II. This is what we were talking about on Friday with Bruce. And so, I mean, theoretically, we're already at war. It's not the powers of this world, but it's the powers of principalities. This is what we're dealing with, and we're dealing with them as incarnate demons, and they're here to make life a living hell for people during this time. 3 years. 3 years. Between now and when Saturn goes into Taurus, and by the way, that is the new land. Saturn in Taurus is the new land. That is when, because we're not going to have any land once Uranus moves into Gemini full-time next year. We have 1 year Uranus in Virgo, which is mutable Earth. And after that, we got no land. It's all air and fire. Air and fire. And I had a conversation with a guy yesterday who was in Vietnam. And he talked about Agent Orange, which is a defoliant. And he said it really fucked him up, right? But if you look at the Agent Orange, we know is part of, like Robert McNamara wanted to sell a bunch of fucking defoliant. He's like, yeah, we're going to defoliate the jungle because that's where they hide. So we're just going there. But they sprayed this Agent Orange, this dioxin, all over these soldiers, and it really fucked them up. This guy he had a laundry list. I'm surprised he was alive. And but the other thing that the Vietnam War is known for is napalm. They dropped a lot of napalm, and it feels very much like the outer planets: Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius, air and fire, combustible as hell. And of course, who do we have reemerging onto our screens? None other than Charlie fucking Sheen. Charlie Sheen now enters the movie. We have two Charlies. Two Charlies. We have the death of Charlie Kirk, and then we have the resurrection of Charlie Sheen. Wrap your noodle around that, because I'm watching Charlie Sheen. He's on Rogan. He's got the book tour. He's got the Netflix show, and this is all about him. Maureen Callahan says it's his redemption tour, and she hates him. Look, I think men can be complete and utter assholes and jerks, but you have to realize that Charlie Sheen grew up in a very different world. We're going to look at his chart. And he grew up in a very, very different world. He grew up in Hollywood. He was privileged. He's got a very interesting chart. Both he and Charlie Kirk both have Mars in Scorpio, which I think is interesting. You know, for Kirk, it's that Mars-Mercury conjunction. And that's the debate, right? That is the debate, his ability to debate and fearless. So when you hear him talk to Ben Shapiro about the United States giving Israel money, that's the Mercury-Mars conjunction in Charlie Kirk's chart. Charlie Sheen has a Mars-Neptune conjunction with Mars in Scorpio. Mars in Scorpio, Neptune in Scorpio. Charlie Kirk, Mars in Scorpio, Mercury in Scorpio. You can see how those Marses got used a little bit differently. You know, with Charlie Sheen, it was a combination of cocaine and testosterone, according to his time on Joe Rogan. We're going to look at Charlie Sheen's chart. But you see where it's going? It's like, okay, well, here goes Charlie Kirk. Here comes Charlie Sheen. And Charlie Sheen is a Virgo. Oh, isn't that interesting? So we see the resurrection of Charlie Sheen during his birth month. Isn't that interesting? The solar return is the return of Charlie Sheen. I had no idea where the fuck that guy. In fact, I was thinking, like, whatever happened to Charlie Sheen? We were talking about it today. Whatever happened to Charlie? Well, here he is. He's back with many tales to tell. What's interesting is that whole tiger blood thing. I don't know if you guys saw that. But he was whacked out of his brain, and he was watching the Dodgers play one night. And the Dodgers had this pitcher named Brian Wilson. And again, when you run into this stuff, you run into these doppelgangers. And some of them are intentional and some of them aren't. So you have Brian Wilson from Los Angeles, the Beach Boys, a Gemini. And then you have Brian Wilson, who was a pitcher for the Giants, and then he signs with the Dodgers. Again, the LA connection. And that Brian Wilson is a Pisces. So he's opposite Charlie Sheen, and he's telling him, hey, man, we're just built different. You know, we're not the same as other people. We've got tiger blood in our veins. And so Brian Wilson was trying to help him. And he kind of ran with it. And he said, you know, the reason why they hate us because we're always winning, man. We're always winning in life. And then he blurts that out during the ABC TV interview, which goes completely sideways and starts an even accelerated downfall of Charlie Sheen. So we'll get into him in a minute. But this whole, you know, we're in this weird space. It's like a well, I like to call it the Gemini effect. And it has to do with polarity and magic, black and white, right? These are the primary symbols of order and chaos. White is generally considered order. Black is generally considered chaos. And these are the two colors that represent order and chaos. Why? Because black represents the spectrum of all colors into one, so it's chaotic. And then white clearly is not that. And if you go through history referentially, black is always a symbol of darkness. And that's why it's also connected to disorder and chaos. Whereas white is considered to be white, light, orderly. It's the Apollonian. Black is the Dionysian. And these are the two Hermetic principles. And so we're in that. When you see, you know, there are people that didn't like Charlie Kirk. And they didn't like Charlie Kirk because they didn't really understand Charlie Kirk. And they got sound bites. And they couldn't see everything that he was saying contextually. So these are people that would see Charlie Kirk as being evil. For them, it's a black and white issue. And even though Charlie Kirk is white, that's one of his problems as well. So he's very divisive. He's very polarizing. And then you have this other divisive and polarizing person who now reemerges onto the scene. So one of my favorite movies is The Prestige. And if you haven't seen The Prestige, I highly urge you to see it. But you may want to skip the next 5 minutes because I'm going to talk about the spoiler. So The Prestige is the moment where the magician is about to unveil the magic. And it's a very delicate moment because the trick can go sideways. And the idea is to keep the illusion intact. So when the trick is done, the prestige, that moment, has been fulfilled. It's been complete. And in the movie, you have Hugh Jackman and then you have Christian Bale. And they're warring magicians. And Hugh Jackman is famous. And Christian Bale is connected to him at some point, and they have a falling out. And he starts to do his own magic, right? And so Christian Bale has this trick that is better than any trick that Hugh Jackman can create. So he has to go find somebody who can help him create a greater illusion, a much better prestige. So his journey takes him to Colorado, and he finds Tesla. Now, in the movie, David Bowie is supposedly plays Tesla, but I have seen critical reviews where that's a trick and that David Bowie isn't really Tesla. The guy who is his assistant is actually Tesla. So they have their own version of this sort of doppelganger, one person sitting in for another, right? It's a theme that sort of runs through the movie, which you will find out later on. So the Tesla character creates this thing where Hugh Jackman can recreate himself, right? Like he can recreate it, but it's technology. But for every time he recreates himself, he has to kill that version of him. And so he drops down. Like the way that the trick works is that he appears in two places at once. And then one of them only survives. The biological recreation through Tesla's technology, spoiler alert, has to be killed. And what he doesn't realize is that Christian Bale has a twin. Right? It's like he has a twin, and that's how he's able to pull this trick off. And the Hugh Jackman character turns into just a horrible person. The Christian Bale character is not great either. But so what you're seeing here, in a lot of ways, is like a grand illusion. Charlie Kirk, he goes down, and Charlie Sheen comes up. Right? It's like the grand illusion. And that's kind of what we're seeing here in general with this whole stage setting. It's a ritualized setting in a ritual environment, the menorah. And what we're seeing is high arch magic. And then part of what they're able to do is they're able to create as many holes in the story as possible. When you get Michael Savage talking about how this thing doesn't line up, Michael Savage is not a conspiracy theorist. Maybe a smidge. But you got him in conspiracy theory world. And so you have all these people. And by the way, if I spent enough time piecing it all together, hell, I could become an advocate that this is all staged, it's all fake. I've even gone to the point where it's like, was Charlie Kirk just a construct? Like, I've even gone down that path. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we had William Ramsey on the show. And I thought, what did we talk about? We talked about the Manchurian Candidate. And that the Lee Harvey Oswald character was created. He was a construct. And that he was created to do one thing. And that was to shoot the person who was running for president of the United States. And it all started to happen when he got captured in Korea by the Chinese. And I even went down that path. Like, was Charlie Kirk even real? And you know, I haven't given that up yet. Like, we'll get into his parents in a minute. But there's something about all of this that seemed predestined. Like, it was going to happen. It was going to happen on that day. It was going to happen on that site. It was going to happen with this arrangement. And then you're going to have, you know, what looks like two shooters again, dealing with what was the word we use? Doppelganger. Well, you know who else used that word? Tyler Robinson. Tyler Robinson used that word. Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, joked with pals on Discord about his image and FBI photo was his doppelganger. Who else did we see do that? Jamie Foxx, right? What was it? A clone Tyrone? Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, flippantly joked with friends on Discord that his doppelganger was the one who shot the conservative activist after the feds released the photos while he was on the run, a report said. You know who else did that? The defense back from the Buffalo Bills who had a heart thing during the game. Do you remember that? And he stood by a mural that said that he was a clone. It was like duping us. Anyway, the 22-year-old accused assassin's chats with his pals lit up the social media messaging platform Thursday afternoon when the FBI released grainy images of a lanky college-age man. They're always grainy images, aren't they? Yeah. They can fucking pick up a needle from space on the ground and have it be 5K. And yet, we just get the grainy images. Okay. One of his virtual buddies noticed a similarity and tagged Robinson in a post with FBI images, writing, "Why, where you at?" alongside a skull emoji. Robinson accused of blasting the Turning Point founder of the net. Wow, blasting. With one fatal bullet. Do you know how hard that is? One fatal bullet. You know how tight that window is? Shot back within a minute, shamelessly insisting it was a lookalike trying to get me in trouble. Tyler killed Charlie, another user then wrote, the outlet reported. One member of the 20-person group chat suggested turning Robinson in to claim the FBI's $100,000 reward. Does his father get the reward? I mean, he turned him in, didn't he? Only if I get a cut, the alleged assailant sneered, using an avatar of John Arbuckle, Garfield's perpetually confused owner. Whatever you do, don't go to McDonald's anytime soon. So he's talking about Luigi Mangione. Interesting. Luigi Mangione was nabbed, the paper reported. Yes. And here's Kirk. Now, where he shot right? This area is EDOM, which is Edom. And that was clearly pointing out that perhaps the players behind this had a lot more to do with the menorah. Robinson then agreed, callously jesting, that he better also get rid of his manifesto, an exact copy rifle I have lying around before urging the shooter was clearly from California. The accused gunman went on to mock the FBI's investigation, referencing the trans scribblings found on the ammunition and claiming that it was all fabricated by some dude in the briefing room. Casings found at Utah Valley University, where Kirk was shot, bore inscriptions, but they haven't found the bullet. They haven't released the bullet. Hey, fascist, catch. The bullets were fired roughly 200 yards from an imported 30-06 that had the scope on backwards, by the way. Yeah. Bolt action rifle that investigators found wrapped in a towel in a wooded area. Robinson is accused of firing the fatal shot at the married father of the two young children, who was seated under a pop-up tent while speaking to thousands on the first stop of his American comeback tour. Interesting. The alleged killer turned himself into authorities in southwest Utah, more than a 3-hour drive from the Orem campus. After being confronted by his own father and speaking with the youth minister about the shooting, law enforcement sources said after his arrest, his friends on Discord were in disbelief. He was the real killer, with one noting that officials want him to face the death penalty for the public and savage slaying, the outlet reported. I truly cannot distinguish if this is for real, another says. That's the way they want it. They want it so that there is this inability to understand what's real and what's not real. There are a lot of people that were finger pointing at the stabbing of Irene Zarutska as not being real. And there are other people that are pointing at this as clearly not being real. At the end of the day, is Charlie Kirk going to come back? It's doubtful. It's very doubtful we'll ever see Charlie Kirk again. Unless, of course, they're really fucking with us and he shows up as a completely different character. But he's 6'5". It's hard to... Maybe he's being played by Billy Corgan. Billy Corgan's 6'5", isn't he? He's big. He's bald. He could probably get a latex mask over his head. No, I don't think he's being played by Billy Corgan, but they're both from the same area. Why don't we talk about where Charlie Kirk is from? That's interesting. Let's take a look at this. Here's where the tease is going to come out. Born October 14th, 1993, same birthday as George Floyd. Ritual, Enochian, black and white magic ritual, right? He was executive director of the student organization Turning Point USA, which he co-founded in 2012 to promote conservative beliefs in high schools and on college campuses. He published a range of books and hosted the Charlie Kirk Show, a conservative talk radio program. In his later years, he became recognized as one of the most prominent voices of the populist MAGA movement in the Republican Party. So here we go. Kirk was born and raised in the Chicago suburbs of Arlington Heights and Prospect Heights. Okay. Let me think about this. There was a shooter who lit up, what was it? A Christmas celebration outside of Chicago. And it wasn't Arlington Heights, but it was It was close. Anyway, I'll talk about that later. Okay. After being rejected from the West Point Military Academy, he briefly attended Harper College but dropped out after one semester to pursue political activism full-time. He worked with various donors to fund TPUSA. Rising to prominence via college campus debates held at his signature Prove Me Wrong table. He has since been credited with generating interest in political conservatism amongst the youth. He extended TPUSA's influence through the Professor Watch List and School Board Watch List, founded to spread conservative ideals at liberal-leaning colleges. Under his leadership, TPUSA developed several affiliate groups, including Turning Point Action and Turning Point Faith. Initially critical of the evangelical right, he shifted to Christian nationalism, advocating a Christian form of government and a Christian population. A key ally of Donald Trump, just put a pin on that. He promoted far-right and Trump-aligned causes. Trump is not far-right. Trump is whatever he'll need to be, including opposition to abortion, gun control, and LGBT rights. His more controversial views include his criticism of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Martin Luther King and his promotion of COVID-19 misinformation and false claims of electoral fraud in 2020. So it gets into where his death is. Early life, okay? So born in Arlington Heights, Illinois, raised in nearby Prospect Heights by his father, Robert W. Kirk. Watch this. Is an architect who was involved in the construction of Trump Tower. Charlie Kirk has had a relationship with Donald Trump since he was born. Make of that what you will. How many of you knew that? If you knew that, raise your hand. His father helped build freaking Trump Tower. So he was a Boy Scout. He was an Eagle Scout. His father, I guess, donated to the Romney campaign. And then this is weird, right? This gets back into like the doubles, the doppelganger. In 2010, during his junior year at Wheeling High School, Kirk volunteered for the successful U.S. Senate campaign of Illinois Republican Mark Kirk. So we have two Kirks now. Let's look at there's Mark Kirk. Born on September 15th. Tomorrow's his birthday. Another Virgo. So you have two Kirks now. Isn't that interesting? So I just wanted to show you that bit that his father helped build freaking Trump Tower. It's wild, right? And there it is. And this is where they filmed The Devil's Advocate, where the Craig T. Nelson architect builder character has his penthouse. And he's being represented by Keanu Reeves to get him off, being tried for murdering his family. It's interesting. Trump Towers is 202 meters. That's 22. Interesting. Why didn't you just go the extra 3 feet and make it a 666 foot tall? I guess the meters would be maybe Ivana was into the metric system at the time. 222, Donald. 22, 202. It's perfect. Perfect. So isn't that weird that Charlie Kirk's father helped? Charlie Kirk has known Trump all of his life. All of his life. And you have to wonder about like limited hangs, like TPUSA. Is TP limited hang? Was now who's taking it over? Well, I guess Ben Shapiro has volunteered to run it. And didn't Bibi Netanyahu offer his condolences like just after he got shot? Like, how did he, like, there's a weird timing thing with Netanyahu. Like, they plant these seeds of doubt. Like that book, like they none of this stuff goes off without any type of foreknowledge and what's the word I'm looking for? Pre-planning. You think they just set this shit up? You think that kid just showed up with his rifle and today I'm going to hit a dime. That shot was a dime. And again, that's not including the potential for the Hollywood prosthesis and apparatus. I'm not going to get into it tonight. I'll probably dive into it. I'm going to do a whole series of shows this week based on the Kirk thing. So we're just getting cooking here. By the way, another interesting Kirk is Richard T. Kirk. You have James T. Kirk, the captain of the Enterprise, William Shatner, who's still around. But James T. Kirk has a song called "The Number of Magic." Richard T. Kirk, "The Number of Magic." You should listen to it sometime. I've played it before on some of my shows. The number of magic. 7 is the number of magic. Anyway. So we're just supposed to believe another trans killer. We have the cult of the killer trans cult, the cult of the trans killers. We're supposed to believe that. Like that's the company line. That's the story. I'm not buying it. Now, I do buy the fact that these kids are connected to handlers, like the shooter in Uvalde or the shooter at the Costco in El Paso, or the shooter in Buffalo, or the shooter in Illinois. They all have weird connections through Discord with handlers. And it does seem like the kids are on the spectrum. I can't really co-sign that this guy. I don't think he shot or unalived Charlie Kirk. If we're going to go down that path, I'm going with the doppelganger, and the doppelganger being a much better shooter. That's if we're gonna go down, this is a hit, assassination. He's getting too close to the menorah flame, questioning Israel. I'm going with the doppelganger. I'm going with the guy that looks like him but isn't him. That's what I'm going with. If we're going to go down, I don't think this Tyler Robinson kid is it. Sorry. People have no clue how hard it is to make that shot, especially when the sight is reversed, because that's how they found it. Unless he's nearsighted or farsighted or something. That's just not how things work. So again, we're in this weird sort of Gemini, high strange world. That's where we are. I want to bring up Charlie Sheen's chart because again, we have the death of one Charlie and the sort of the rise of another Charlie, which is really, really weird. Okay. Where's my Charlie Sheen chart? Give me a second. So we started late tonight. I started at 8, and I've already had some people from chat bail out because it's getting late. So my plan is to do a show on the eclipse on Friday. So the Friday forecast will be an eclipse show. And we're already in the eclipse wave. It's one day before the eclipse. Oh, I know it. I didn't do his chart. Hold on. By the way, if we're talking Chicago, Charlie Sheen is connected to the city of Chicago with one of his movies. Do you know what that movie is? It's Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He plays a hoodlum thug at the police station. There we go. All right. Is that right? Let me see if I have it right. Hold on. Let me just check let me corroborate here. Hold on. Okay, Wall Street Young Guns. He was in the movie 9/11. Were you aware of that? Charlie Sheen was in 9/11. I believe that's because he is working with Oliver Stone, and he made more than one movie with Oliver Stone. Let's see what else we have here. Being John Malkovich, which is also about doppelgangers. Okay. Yeah, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Boy in Police Station. So that is clearly connected with the city of Chicago. His first movie was Badlands. He was a boy under a lamppost. His first two movies, I think, were with his father, and The Execution of Private Slovic and Badlands. And then I think his first big movie is Red Dawn, where he plays Matt Eckert. And then I think his real big breakthrough is Platoon. He played the fourth wise man on a TV movie. The Story of Artaban. He was in the movie. The fourth magi, who spends his life looking for Jesus as king. That's fucking crazy. So Artaban is his father, Martin Sheen. So Charlie's even connected to the Jesus story. I've never seen this before. I didn't even know this movie existed. Martin Sheen, Alan Arkin, Ralph Bellamy, Lance Kerwin, who was in James at 13 or 14 or whatever. Adam Arkin. James Ferrantino played the voice of Jesus. Martin Sheen's father was in this. Joe Estevez. About that. Charlie Sheen played Maximus. A Roman. He's in a freaking Jesus movie. The Fourth Wise Man. Of course, his father is a big-time Catholic. Changed his name to Reverend Bishop Fulton Sheen. He's in Estevez. Let me get his chart. That was just wild. All right, here we go. Let's just do a quick little Charlie Sheen here. I wonder if I put it over on also Astro. Let me see what I put on Astro. Gemini rising. You don't say. You don't say. True note in Gemini. You don't say. Of course, he has a brother who is very Gemini, who also acts. Right? You got Charlie Kirk. Okay, I think I just nailed it here. All right. Gemini rising. There's that Mars-Neptune conjunction. He's got a lot of tiger blood. When he got rolling, didn't he? Good time, Charlie. He's got the Sun, Uranus, Pluto conjunction. Good luck trying to rein that in. Good freaking luck. Jupiter and Gemini. That is in its detriment. Right? So it's Jupiter, Gemini, detriment. It's got Saturn in Pisces retrograde. I would say that's very much his father. That's Martin Sheen, who's, again, religious. Was he the best father? Probably not. But hey, it was the 60s. LA. And he's got a bit of an issue with authority with those oppositions. I think Charlie's one of these guys where if he wasn't an actor and had his connections, he would have been way more fucked than he was. I'm telling you right now. There were rumors that he actually died, by the way. I'm sure you guys have seen that, like the clone rumors. One of his buddies, of course, is Alex Jones, who's an Aquarian. Alex born February 11th. It puts Alex pretty much spot on as part of fortune. How'd that work out for Charlie Sheen? Probably not so good. Right? Moon in Sagittarius. Guy's got a big appetite. Moon, Jupiter opposition. Big, big appetite. But again, the twinning stuff, the Gemini stuff, the Gemini ascendant, Uranus, the rebirth. Uranus is on his freaking ascendant. It's been in his 12th house for 7 years. I tell you what he's been doing. He's been getting his body back together. He's been getting all kinds of like facial work. Like he has been assiduously working towards this moment. And then he's got Uranus here. Boom. Now, Uranus will go retrograde, and I'm wondering how he's going to deal with this new flush of kind of refame, because it's going to go back into his 12th house. And then it's going to come back again. I wouldn't be surprised if he relapses or has a mild form of a relapse. I'm actually rooting for him. I liked Charlie Sheen. I didn't like his show, 2.5 Men. The kid went off the rails, right? He went cuckoo. Like, I just wasn't into TV back then. He was such a, he was such a cad, set up, cheap laughs. I hate that fucking style of TV. I think he did too. That show was so popular, so incredibly popular, that he couldn't do any wrong. But you could see the Iranian effect right there in his ascendant. It's like, just been activated. Oh, look, Charlie Sheen, he's back. Isn't that interesting? His son, S-U-N, Charlie Kirk's born in the 15th. So what is he, 24 Libra? So there is a conjunction with Charlie Sheen and Charlie Kirk's son. They are conjunct one another right there. It's a wide conjunction. It's not like, oh, look at that. Over the money, over the target, on the money. But he's an Aquarian, and that's he's Aquarian midheaven. So good luck. Good luck reining him in. You're not going to be able to do it. You're just not going to be able to do it. And I guess he'd been through another previous rehab thing where he did the perp walk coming out of rehab, and he saw that, and he was like ashamed of his shame, you know? It's funny, Astro Theme doesn't do Chiron. They really should. When's he born? 65. So he has Chiron and Pisces. So put Chiron right here. So he's part of that. This Chiron, Saturn, Pluto, Uranus opposition of 65, 66. Bruce McDonald has that. I was talking a little bit about that on Bruce's show. People have a propensity for dark healing. They have usually a healing crisis. Heaven and hell kind of stuff, right? And a lot of times they'll experience some kind of divine intervention or miracle. Very interesting. It's a very small window for that Chiron-Saturn conjunction. It's only between 1965 and 1966 with that Pluto-Uranus. So it's a very, very unique. Jimmy Dore has that as well. Jimmy Dore is born in 1965. Jimmy Dore is a Cancer, so he's born just a couple months before Charlie Sheen. They kind of look alike too, don't they, in their own way? There's kind of a thing there with the hair, Jimmy Dore and Charlie Sheen. Anyway. Yeah, I think the most noteworthy part of the resurrection is Uranus playing this activator, catalyzer, the jump start. He's getting the jump start. It's like they're taking the battery wires and hooking them up to the terminals on Frankenstein's neck. Oh, here's Charlie Sheen. I just think it's fascinating. Again, the kind of the broad loop of what we've been talking about here, right, are doubles, clones, doppelgangers. And there's an energy that's harvested with all of this. Especially when it falls into confusion and people don't know what's going on. And you can go back to the Kennedy assassination and Oswald's doppelganger and Kennedy's doppelganger, right? Because they were there. And that's all Gemini. That's all Gemini arch Babylonian magic shit. Anyway, so we have the two Charlies. We have the death of one Charlie. Theoretically, if you are in the ethers, we wish your soul to rest in peace. And if you're not, and you show up as somebody else, we wish you to rot in hell. I'm just being Gemini here. Just being Gemini. Oh, the Valhalla stuff. Yeah, the Valhalla stuff. The 33, the 36. Thank you for that, Joni. The Valhalla stuff. That's when Kash Patel said he went to Valhalla, right? This is another part of the whole thing. Valhalla was a term that was used by the producers of Survivor, where when somebody was booted off the show, they couldn't send them back to the States because they didn't want them to tell anybody. So they had to stay on the island or wherever they were. And, if being in Valhalla would probably be pretty cool if you didn't win the show. Like getting cut and being in Valhalla for the entirety of the show, you probably eat well, probably drink well, some tropical location for 2 months. Right? So they called that place Valhalla. That's where Cash 33 Patel, that's what he references. So the creator of Survivor brings us to another interesting connection here in our 6 degrees of Charlie Kirk. Mark Burnett. Do you know another show Mark Burnett created? The Apprentice. Mark Burnett. Isn't that interesting? And there are people that will tell you what you're really, really looking at here is you're looking at a production, at a staged production. He's born July 17th, 1960. He is the envoy to England, the UK. He produced The Apprentice, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?, Shark Tank, Survivor, The Voice, Beat Shazam, The Martha Stewart Show, and Generation Gap. This guy is freaking successful. James Mark Burnett, July 17th, 1965. His current wife is Roma Downey. Touched by an Angel. Remember that show? We were talking about angels earlier. He also created the Christian media series, The Bible and AD, The Bible Continues, and produced feature films, Son of God, Little Boy, Woodlawn, and Ben-Hur. Okay, so you have the creator of The Survivor, the guy who creates Valhalla, who creates also Christian and biblical content. And then you have Charlie Sheen, who is in the Fourth Madness. Like, wow, this is definitely getting into the whole 6 degrees of separation world. He was born in London and served in the Falklands. In October 1982, Burnett emigrated to the United States, where his friend Nick Hill, who had emigrated from the UK earlier, was working as a nanny and a chauffeur. Well, at least he knew how to speak English. Hill knew of an open position and a live-in nanny with the Yeager family in affluent Beverly Hills. Despite having no experience as a nanny, it sounds like Irene Zarutska, doesn't it? Burnett went on to the interview. The Yeagers, realizing the advantage of having a nanny and a security at the same time, hired him because he's ex-military. After a year of working for the Yeagers, moved on to another family in Malibu, taking care of 2 boys for $250 a week. He eventually was given a position in the insurance office owned by the boy's father. 2 years later, Burnett rented a position of a fence at Venice Beach in Los Angeles and sold T-shirts for $18 during weekends. Realized he made more money selling T-shirts and he left his insurance job. In 1999, Burnett and 4 others joined the French adventure competition, the Raid Gaulois. Afterward, Burnett saw opportunity in holding similar competitions. He purchased the formal rights and bought a similar competition, Eco Challenge, to America. And that's how he becomes a producer. Well, that's the Wikipedia version. By the way, I have something to say about Wikipedia. One of the things with Wikipedia is that they are disappearing parts of history. Oh, check this out. Burnett's first wife was Kim Gold, but that marriage lasted only about a year. Before that marriage ended, he met Diane J. Burnett, Nee Valentine. So she was Diane Valentine. They married in 1992. They have 2 sons together, James and Cameron. Like James Cameron. In 2014, Cameron survived neuroendocrine tumor at the age of 17, had brain surgery, learned to walk again. Cameron was awarded the 2015 Courage Award at the Visionary Ball, which raises money each year for UCLA's Department of Neurosurgery. And then they divorced. And then he meets up with Roma Downey. Interesting. What was I going to say about this? Right. Okay. Burnett had time slot winning shows 6 nights out of 7 as chairman of MGM. Worldwide television. He oversaw scripted TV shows, including Fargo, The Handmaid's Tale, Vikings, and guess what? Drum roll, please. Vikings Valhalla. Isn't that interesting? And Kash Patel says he's in Valhalla now. He being Charlie Kirk, who was not in the military. And Tammy Duckworth, who's as dumb as a dime, was accusing Kash Patel of awarding Charlie Kirk stolen valor because Valhalla is only allowed for real warriors and real people in the army who died in battle. Okay, really? That's bizarre. So there's this weird thing with Mark Burnett. He is a master TV producer. Master. He's probably having the life I should have had. So if that's true, is Charlie Kirk hanging out in metaphorical Valhalla or Survivor Valhalla? Like, why was Kash Patel doing a little dropping code there? Little cookie crumb. Because that's what the Trump people, the MAGA people will have you believe. That this is all an act. And this is all to catch the bad guys, the perps. And if that's true, then this is a Mark Burnett production that you're watching. Anyway, we've gone on for a while here. Good 3 hours. It's normally what I do. If I were to tie this in a bow, and we're going to continue to do more of this over the course of the week. So join me over on Rumble. If you haven't seen 15 Minutes of Flame, I had to stop because I was going to use that time to work on a book, and then my heart wanted to stop. And so I had to just lay low for a while. But I think this week we'll do just our shows over on Rumble. And I'm going to continue to follow the gravy drippings here and see if we can come to some varying perspectives. I'm at a point, remember, in the second coming, what does Yeats say? The worst are filled with passion and intensity, while the best lack all conviction. I'm in the lacking all conviction part. Not that I'm cynical, but I don't want to get sucked in to the Loosh monster. These people are not getting my energy. They're not getting my energy. You know, at the end of the day, I don't even know Erica Erica Burnett. I don't even know Erica Kirk. I don't know her. But at the end of the day, she married Charlie. And somewhere along the way, she realized what his life work would be. There's a danger that goes along with that. If you're involved with somebody who is politically active, and politically active in a way that is controversially politically active, there's a very good chance they could lose their life. You have to know that. You have to say, yeah, at some point, Charlie Kirk could have said, hey, look, I could be taken out because of my convictions. Are you willing to death do us part with this? Yeah. Okay, as long as you know. Right? So if that's true, then she agreed to be his wife, his mate, his partner, mother of his child. And I don't want to sound cold. It goes along with the territory. Is it any better? Does it make it any better? No, not really. But I can't put myself in her shoes right now and go through her emotional tidings. I can't. Or her emotional catastrophe, dilemma. I can't. Number one, I'm not her. Number two, there are plenty of other people who would go there and just, feel so much for her. And yet, I'm not trying to be cold. I'm just trying to be cool and not get sucked in to this fucking loosh monster. I'm not going to do it. And if you're going to ask me, well, then you must think it's fake. I'm not getting sucked into that loosh monster either, because we're creating something here that has us at our throats. People inside the truth community can't even agree upon what the fuck happens. But we can agree upon what happens afterwards, because that's on the record. And they have passed 3 laws that are banning hate speech for Israel. You could lose your passport. Not your visa if you're here on a stay, your passport. So these are the numbers that I'm looking at. I'm looking at the after effect. I'm looking at what happens to TPUSA afterwards. I'm looking at how does this affect Nick Fuentes? How does this affect people who have been getting real close to the third rail? And how it pours cold water in that conversation. These are the things that I'm looking at. And for me, it's this passionate exercise than getting fired up about who did what. Because honestly, if it's the people that we believe are behind this, does that really surprise us? If anything, it is confirmation bias in real time. So, this is where I'd like to end, is you can go down this rabbit hole, and we have more information at our disposal than ever before. Gen Z are amazing at connecting dots. We're getting all, I have to say, this is not me sort of banging my own drum here, but I've been doing this for a while, and I've been doing charts like this and reading at a mundane level for events like this for a while. And now I see dozens, if not hundreds of people using very similar tools. And I'm not saying they've watched my show. Maybe some of them have. But there's a lot more versions of Robert Phoenix out there now than there were 3 or 4 years ago. I'm clear about that. Totally clear. And I'm happy there are. I'm happy there are people that are able to go to the meta, that bring in their own set of tools that can help us basically deconstruct whatever this version of reality they're feeding to us is. And it's not reality. Again, one of the things that I brought up on Twitter, is that they basically have deconstructed Hollywood. They've left Hollywood. There's no really great movies anymore. TV series aren't even produced in the late. They used to have lots that they would produce TV series on. Now they go to places like Canada or Australia or Georgia or Tennessee or New Mexico, or Vancouver. Like these are the areas where they have a lot of production now. So even Hollywood, like the sets, like MASH was just a Hollywood fucking set. Hogan's Heroes, all those guys dressing up like they're in the cold winter in Germany at a prison camp. It's like 85 degrees on a back lot. That's what those guys were doing. Gilligan's Island. Like that's all Hollywood. So all that has been pretty much disassembled. And now Hollywood has been injected into quote unquote real world by people like Mark Burnett and reality TV. So this is kind of how I see what's going on. That we're in the Truman Show. And there are going to be times where people are killed and they are taken out. And there are going to be times when people aren't killed, but it looks like they're taken out. And there are going to be times where there's a combination of both. Hello, Boston Marathon. There's a term for it in this kind of occult stagecraft. It's called shadows and light. And they run two separate things at the same time that look the same. And they're able to create very different results from those two things. Anyway, that's my advice to you. It's been my advice the entire week. Go ahead, rabbit hole this thing. Take your friend's stuff, send things, especially if they're meaningful. But you better know where you're sending them to. And you better know that you're going to have to probably back it up if somebody says you're crazy or that's really rude. Just know what you're getting into. You're an adult. You can make your own choices. Right? You have the ability to consent or not consent to how you interact with reality. So that's where I want to leave you. Stay cool. Be cool out there. And we'll continue to dig. We'll continue to bring this stuff up and look at it and pull it apart from the seams. But I guarantee you, when we get close to the light, there'll be another event, another event, another event, another event, another event. They're going to come fast and furious now. And we're not going to have a lot of time between these events to break them down. The ultimate goal here is to create full chaos so that nobody knows what's up or down, left or right. And even some of the best decoders we have will be led straight into freaking cul-de-sacs. And they're going to go, fuck. Because they know that this is going on, right? They see where we're going. They see what we're reading. They see the dots we're connecting. And it's all AI. AI is bringing that information back. Who's doing it? Who's close to the flame, right? Where do we lead them astray here? Where do we take them down this blind alley or this blind alley or that blind alley? Just note the associations. Mark Burnett, Valhalla, Donald Trump. Who built Trump Tower? Well, one of the architects just happened to be Charlie Kirk's dad. So now, all of a sudden, we're looking at this. Oh, this is really interesting. Now Trump becomes the center of this constellation around Charlie Kirk. Anyway, that's all I've got for tonight. Thank you for being here. A lot of you in the house tonight. I'm glad you stopped by. Hit the like if you liked it. Subscribe. Please subscribe and ring the bell There are still people who say, where can I find your show? It's really easy. All you have to do is subscribe and hit the bell, and you'll get notified when I go live. So even if I'm running late, you'll get notified. Usually we try to go live at 7. I had a time dilemma today. And it had mostly to do with the deeply uncooperative thumbnail. All right. Okay. Thank you all. Mods, thank you very much. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee, there's a link for that. If you'd like an astrological reading, I'm going to be getting back into those. If you've gotten one, just please bear with me. Be patient. I have to dig my way out of it, but I will return your correspondence. I promise. Okay. All right. That's it. Take care of each other. Treat yourself well. Actually, it's take care of yourself. Treat each other well. God bless. Bye for now. Good night. Robert Phoenix signing off.